Hey everybody, it's Chris and Mike from All Things 3D.
Hi.
Today is August 1st. Hello August. Hello hot summer nights in California. And today we are in our weekly weekend review and talking about things that happened this week in the world of 3D. As you can see, Mike and I wearing our goggles. I'm wearing my fake Oculus, but he's wearing his new DK2.
Well,
Jealous.
actually, I've got two things that I'm wearing today, and we're going to talk about both. One is obviously the DK2 above my head. It actually still hasn't been fired up yet. You know, it's
Oh,
funny. Well, we'll talk about it in a minute, but and the other item's a pretty cool item that we'll get into as well. It's called the Stooksy VR-Spektiv because it's
oh,
from Germany. And
very
I
cool.
finally got mine, and then they sent me another one, which I will give to my friend Chris.
Oh, lucky dog I am. Wow. So DK2 though, been hearing a lot of really good things and hashtag jealous. So
Okay.
we'll get started with the news items.
Yep,
So
looks like I've got the first one, so I'll go
okay,
ahead and move
cool.
forward. All right, so I'll jump over to the screen, but as you can see, I'm wearing mine up here. The Spective or the VR-Spektiv is below that, and I'll get into that. But a couple of things that came out, as most of you are aware of now, who we've been jonesing for. It just came out, and what's funny is that last week I kind of wrote him a note and said, I'm going to bring that up on the podcast. I don't know how you divvy these out, but I paid for mine up front, was within the first 2 hours, and I haven't heard word about it. Next thing you know, that same day, Friday afternoon, I got a UPS, whatever you call
Tracking.
it, tracking number. So pretty cool on their part. Thank you, Oculus. So, so one of the things, and some of you have already seen this, or maybe not, the and this is called Road to VR. One of the things that we're going to start doing now is identifying our sources. I think that's just appropriate. But Road to VR actually went back to iFixit, which is our friends who sponsor many of our guests with their 52-bit toolkit
And
for
they're
all of
local.
yeah, and they are local, so I know a few of them. In fact, I have a little story to talk about. I did a seminar and I borrowed their DK1, and when they gave it to me, obviously they tear them down, as you can see here. I don't know if they were doing a prank on me, but this panel didn't work, so I had to open it up. Sure enough, they didn't put the connector on. And then when I put it back together, the accelerometer was put in backwards. So when I moved left, I was actually moving right, up, down. It was completely reversed. So
What?
I'm like, yeah,
On your DK2? No,
no,
your
not mine. The one that iFixit had torn apart for their teardown
Oh.
last year. So I don't know
Uh,
if it was they were pranking me, but it was kind of funny, and I actually went out to their website this morning or actually last night and said, I hope this one works after you put it back together.
so this is
Well,
pretty all-time. The iFixit teardown was definitely one of my favorite
yeah,
topics that I saw this week.
yeah, and here's actually the, oops, yeah, don't want to do that. Hang on. So yeah, this is their teardown of it, and essentially they went through and identified pretty much what a lot of people had already known. Other than I didn't know that it was going to be a Galaxy Note 3, the rumors were that they were going to be using a Samsung S4 1080p screen, but they did go with the Note 3, which is a larger screen. So good for them. Actually, they showed
Yeah.
here's a 5.7. Um,
And a
yeah,
teardown score of a 9 out of 10 because it used pretty much all standard parts
let's see if
or
it comes out.
Phillips heads. They didn't do any of these crazy pentalobe screws like they put on the iPhone. It was all standard Phillips all the way around. They kind of designed it looks like, to actually take it apart. They're not afraid that people are going to find out that it's a Samsung. Otherwise, they would have some way figured out how to mask that it's a Samsung, uh, you know,
Well, yeah,
screen.
yeah. Normally, when they do that, when they second sort or third source them, either there's no numbers on it or they mask them. In fact, sometimes they even laser etch them out of it. But a lot of people are rumoring that they already have a relationship with Samsung, and then Samsung is actually, from what I've heard, coming out with their own VR where you put your Galaxy Note or your Samsung phone into it, and with software from Oculus Rift, you'll be able to do pretty much the same kind of stuff, which kind of makes sense. Well, the funny thing about this is that the actual panel here still included the touch-sensitive portion of it. So I guess they just got the whole panel as it and just threw it in there, which makes sense because sometimes the assembly is cheaper, as I'm finding out with my lens system, than to go out there and piecemeal it together. But for the most part, same kind of lens system. Housing is a little slimmer. If you go back to my picture, it seems a little more comfortable. I think I've got a big nose, but these panels here seem to push on it, so I don't know. The comfort, I may have to put a little bit of padding for my bulging nose. But other than that, some other articles that came out, let's see where they're at. Oh, I'll get to that. Says that the new tracking thing, which you put on your laptop or your computer screen, works great. In fact, you don't have to be right in front of it. You can actually be a few feet away from it, and it will still track you. And what that means is you no longer just have head movement. You also have, and I'll go back to myself, you also have vertical and horizontal movement of your head. So it will actually track this. So the example in one of the videos that I don't have up, but you can go ahead and find it, and I'll put it in the show notes, shows a guy going underneath a virtual table. He has like a third-person perspective of himself going under or crawling virtually under the table, as well as what you saw through the Oculus Rift. So it's kind of neat. And there are tons of stuff being presented that's not out there yet. Game of Thrones has a virtual reality demo where, if you've ever watched the series, there is a large wall. That's an understatement. And you go up an elevator. So they created a really cool environment at one of their expos I think they had in San Francisco with a lot of the Game of Thrones stuff. But you essentially got into this cage thing, which gave you kind of a claustrophobic feel. You put on the goggles, and it was like you were actually in the cage. They had a wind machine or a fan that allowed you to get the feeling that you were up going higher, and then the sounds made you feel you were up in the large part of the wall, which was pretty cool. And then who else has something? If you saw the movie with the big robots fighting the Godzilla-type characters, do you remember that movie?
Pacific Rim, maybe.
Pacific Rim, exactly.
I haven't seen it, but okay. I just know I saw the trailer.
It's a good B movie. Let's just put it that way. I think Del Toro was moving in that direction for it. So it's a fun movie. But they have also created where you actually get to control. I can't remember the name of it now, but control the robots.
So has 3D Blu-ray come to the Oculus yet?
What does that mean? 3D movies?
But can you pop in like a 3D Blu-ray into your 3D Blu-ray player or like your computer, and is there a VLC type player or even a player you could buy that plays 3D movies high def on your?
Yes. The answer to that question is in the DK1 there were plenty of versions, and the one that was most noticeable is the one where you were in a virtual movie room. So you could literally glide down to whatever seat you wanted and look at a screen, just like you were in a theater. So you could pick your seat, and then you could look around, and I think they even put...
I remember that. I saw that.
So that's available, and a lot of people like that because, obviously it's like you're sitting in a theater. But there are other viewers out there that do provide the 3D, and in fact, there's some out there that I want to get a hold of soon. It's called a 360 camera, where essentially it's got cameras that do the full 360 panorama in video.
Look around.
Exactly. And then you put it on, and it's like you're in the middle of this, and as you look around, you watch the video from different angles.
Right.
So, yes, there are tons of viewers coming out to provide that. When you say Blu-ray, right now it's 1080p, eventually it'll be 4K. Keep in mind that the Oculus Rift is only using a 1080p screen and then splitting that in half. So you're not really getting, and that's more like 1920 horizontal. So you're only getting about 1,000 per eye. So it's much better than the previous version, which was a 720p or 1280 or about 600 per eye. So it's better than that, but it's still not the whole.
It's got a ways to go.
Right, and they're thinking pretty soon we're going to see the 4K panels at this size, and that's probably what the consumer version will be.
Sure.
But for a development version, it's getting better. I thought the first version was extremely polished. The resolution wasn't great, but the immersive perspective of it was just tremendous. So what does this all have to do with 3D? Well, obviously, if you have something like this on, and let's say you wanted a telepresence, as we were talking about with our guest Paul the other day, currently we 3D print models and we send them somewhere. Well, what if you didn't do that? You put on your goggles, and with some haptic gloves, you could literally move an object around in space in front of you with the person that you're doing the telepresence conversation with, and that's one of the big reasons Facebook bought into it. I know a lot of people complained about that, but they're looking at creating another Second Life where you are a Second Life type character. You can go to a meeting, and there's people working on that where it would actually look a lot like you. So that's the perspective. You can actually use it for modeling. There's a company that we've talked to before, creating a STEM system where you actually wear things on each of your appendages, so your entire body is now immersed. And then there's a company with a haptics, so that all of your fingers can be controlled. And then there's obviously a haptic response, so there's some resistance there, so you actually feel like you're touching it. And the great thing about all this is that it's
I could just see where this is going already.
Okay, keep your thoughts to yourself. Okay, we'll do a Kickstarter. Yeah. But essentially, you wear these gloves. You wear the stems so that it knows where your body's at. You use something like the new Connect 2 to know where you're at in a larger space, and then you wear the goggles. So essentially, you become part of your environment. And the great thing is, we're not talking tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is what it cost before to do something like this. It now only costs, like in this case, this was a close to $400 development kit. The gloves are going to be about $400, $500. The Connect 2 you can buy for $200. So for a little over $1,000, you can immerse yourself just like what was it, Snow Crash, a lot of those novels that really identify what things are meant. The big one right now, if you haven't read it, is Ready Player One, which is pretty cool. It kind of goes back to the 80s day, but it's in the future, and VR is a big thing. So if you haven't read it, recommend the book. Okay, well, that's enough about VR.
All
right. Let's head to your item.
All right, very cool, Mike. So so pretty interesting week actually in the world of 3D. I did notice Amazon has launched a, you can see my screen here, Amazon has launched a 3D printing / 3D section to their website now. You can head on over to Amazon. I was unable to find a real easy place to get to it, but they have this 3D printing section now on their website. And essentially what happens is they have a customized area where they have, it looks like resellers are listed, and what you can do is you can actually go through and customize items here. So instead of like your normal Amazon experience, you can actually go over here and hit personalize now, which this is pretty interesting. And like you can pick your finish, your color, you can adjust the size of things kind of on the fly. You can even, this is a Braille bracelet here, so you could kind of adjust your message and then hit use this design. And for $15 you can have this shipped directly, to you. Ships within 6 to 10 days. So right now, the only person that I've seen that has 3D printing on there is Mixi Labs, which I've never heard of. So I don't know if they have some sort of partnership with Amazon. But then also, notably, they have everything nice and tidy under here and kind of organized. For a lot of people that do 3D printing at home, this is where we buy a lot of our filaments, and they obviously have sold printers, scanners for quite some time, but they also now have featured CAD software, because obviously 3D printing, you can't do anything unless you can draw it in 3D, unless you just want to download other people's models all the time, but that's no fun. And then they've got all their books on 3D, which is basically where I started.
Can I point something out? Go back up.
Yeah.
If you look at the software, the first one is AutoCAD 2015. Look at its price, and then go over to the other ones, which is TurboCAD and DesignCAD. Ooh.
Yeah. Well, you gotta pay to play, and when it comes to 3D,
Yeah,
you
but
get what you pay for.
well, but some of these other applications aren't that bad either.
Yeah. I
There's
think the
some good
pressure's
open
on.
source stuff.
Yeah, I think the pressure's on AutoCAD and SolidWorks. I think they're well aware. So I think I think a lot of these companies, from what I've collected from sales reps, talking to industry professionals, is they are doing more to get into the light versions of software, developing either free tools or cheaper tools, or even adopting. I think Adobe's price point of their Creative Cloud has really opened up. I think Adobe's realized, hey, we can make a lot more money getting people to pay the $30, $40, $50 a month if everybody's actually paying for the software rather than pirating it. We can get a lot more we can make a lot more money doing this and not having to sell boxes of software where they can just go on our website and download it. So I think Adobe's really setting they figured out that the subscription service is a lot more effective, probably a lot more profitable for them.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Autodesk has moved in the same direction. Plus,
Sure.
they have a plethora of free tools, Mesh Mixer being one. What is it? The 123 Design series, Tinkercad.
Right.
So, and plus the Fusion 360, which at this point is still free, but it will be their light version. And they do have light versions of their software. They have the AutoCAD LTE or LT. So they are moving in that direction. The other important thing is if you're a student, Autodesk really accommodates you. For $100, you get all of their software for 3 years. So yeah, they really want to get you and embrace you into their system. Well, thank you, Chris, and let's move on to my next item, if you don't mind. Is it okay?
Go for it. Yeah,
Okay.
let's do it.
Well, we talked about this. Remember our seminar that we did, what was it, last September? One of the items that we put in there was Elon Musk talking about using 3D, and we've heard in the news that they were planning to use it for 3D printed parts for the rocket. Well, the article just came out today from 3D Print that they actually had created parts, 3D printed them, and actually used them in the January Falcon 9 rocket launch. So we're actually doing it. And if you continue to read the article, they pretty much said that this expedited the period of time from what was they said months to a matter of weeks or even days.
Yeah.
And found that the parts were stronger and more precise than the version that they were farming out to somewhere else. So that's another plus, and it appears that that they're going to continue to use it. And obviously, with the successful launch of the Falcon 9, this was a good thing. So and one of the things that you and I, Chris, know is that if you have a little design experience, it's so easy now to say, "Gosh, I wish I had that part." And voila, you can make that part. And with the materials, even from the consumer or prosumer, becoming cheaper and wider range, you can get elastic materials, super strong materials, and then we'll have a guest on later on, mystery guests. But even SLA are coming out with materials now, and I think you've got an item that you want to talk about a little bit later. So let me get into the next item. So that's the SpaceX item article from 3D Print. And the next one, some of us are still doing FDM. Not all of us are SLA. And one of the sore spots in a lot of FDM printers is having a good extruder. And a lot of them, they 3D print the parts, and they really just don't do the job. And kind of, I've read about it, but kind of the holy grail is creating something out of metal. And this particular one is, I wouldn't say a standardized look, but they have a spring-based, which is what a lot of them have gone to. The rest of the extruder looks very familiar. You have your nozzle here to actually put the material in, and this particular one can be mounted either on the printer itself, as shown here, or it can be put into a Bowden type arrangement. The good thing is they're going to launch this for $49, and that's reasonably priced for an all-metal extruder.
Count me in.
I plan to get one. We're going to have on our show next week the one of the founders of, I always say it wrong, is it See Me CNC, that also has an extruder which I purchased for my Castle Clear because I didn't like the one that came with it. Which is very similar to this, but the nice thing about this, theirs is an injected plastic, this is all metal. And it's about the same price. So look out, see me and CNC, because there's another person on the block, something like that. Okay, so that's about my items, and then Chris, you wanted to get into SLA for some reason. I don't know why, but why don't we just jump back to you?
So I recently jumped into the world of SLA with a beta product that we'll talk about here in a minute. But I did want to make note. See Me CNC has been around for a couple years now. They are pretty reputable in the 3D printer world, kind of the do-it-yourself world, and they make one of my favorite machines here. It's called the Rostock Max. It's a large-scale Delta printer, and it's one of the better-selling machines on the market, I would say. Cost per square inch, it's one of the lowest. It's an all-around great machine, and if you're into tinkering, I highly recommend going out to See Me CNC, and you want an FDM machine. It's a great machine. I've just had really good luck with it, and had a lot of fun building it. But they just announced a new printer called the Droplet, and it's already sold out, as you can see on their website. And it is a do-it-yourself SLA, DLP SLA printer, meaning it uses a DLP projector to project the planes onto a photopolymer, and it prints bottom up, and it pulls material out of a resin bath. So it's similar to a Form Labs.
We just lost Chris, so I guess I'll take over.
And
so yeah,
it's a.
Okay. Chris, can you hear me? We seem to be losing your mic. Actually, we've lost everything. Okay, so I'll just jump back in. Well, one of the things is that See Me CNC has come out with an SLA printer, and let's see what else he's got. Well, the other thing that goes along with printers, and let me jump back to my own screen, is materials. And you need resin in order to print on an SLA printer. And there's a couple of companies out there, but one notably is MadeSolid, who's been working with me and providing me beta materials, and I think even our special guest has been getting materials. Well, they just announced a new material, and I didn't put the link up here on my screen, but I'll just talk about it. It is a more durable resin material, a high strength. So now you can create, and they're calling it the Tuth resin. Now you can use resin, which the disadvantage in the past is great detail, but weak parts. But now they seem to have circumvented that. So I'm going to be printing later on this weekend to verify that. But it looks like it. I don't have any pricing right now, but looks like if they've kind of licked the problem, you not only can you get precision parts, but you can have durable parts, which is a big plus. So on that note, I'm going to introduce our new guest today. We're going to call him the guest crasher. But essentially, we've talked about him in the past, and that's Brad Hill, who's come out with the, used to be called the Little SLA, but he's changed the name to Little RP, and he's just right around the corner of doing a Kickstarter, and I thought instead of us talking about it, we just have him on and let him talk about it. So we're going to talk to Brad. Brad, you there?
I am here. How you doing?
Hey, Brad. I don't know what happened to Chris, but we'll just move right along, and hopefully he can join us again. So, I didn't know how much you wanted to tell our audience, but I noticed today that 3D Years took your full beta Kickstarter and put it up. Did you see that already?
I did. It's kind of interesting. Like I'd talked a little bit with. There's a couple of these different like media outlets, and they say, oh, I want to, interested in doing an article or whatever, and I say, okay, well here's the preview link, like give you something to look at, and then a couple days later they post like everything, and you're like, well, hold on there a second. So yeah, it wasn't really my intention to have that much stuff out at this point, but I think that it does sort of bring up the fact that I am gearing towards launching it pretty soon. I noticed that it's been a while. I mean, I know that originally I had planned on at least submitting the Kickstarter by the end of June, and so now we're at the end of July. And I think that we're at a point now where I think it's just worth gearing up for the launch and launching it. I've spent the last week or two doing some media assets as far as getting the Kickstarter fleshed out and getting some photos and videos for it. I think it's easy to be a little tough on yourself when doing a campaign like this, especially there's a lot of companies that are using Kickstarter primarily just for promotional purposes, not actually for to get group funding. So it's, a lot of their videos are extremely well done. So I try not to beat myself up too much about it, but
no, don't sell yourself short. As mentioned, and I'm going to actually go to it. You sent us a beta version.
Go to the preview page if you want.
Well, I'll go to 3ders.org, give them a shout out, but essentially, because I'd have to go back and find the link to it, but they put most of the information here. Don't beat yourself up. Your macro shots are excellent. I like your humble beginning. You pretty much said, hey, I've got this great little printer here, and the most important thing is, and I'll drop right down to it, is the quality. As a lot of people, when they see what you can print out of this thing, that's what's impressive, and I'll just kind of go through it. Did you have some type of thought process when you had these nickels in these shots? I don't know.
I've always used... No, I mean, you had mentioned something about
thrifty nickel.
I was more just looking, I needed something. A lot of these times, originally I was having somebody take some photos for me. I didn't have my macro set up and stuff at that time, and they give me these photos back, and they look great, but you just have no idea how large the object is. And I think people realize or people think they're larger than they actually are. And I think that when you're trying to show off small detail, it's sort of difficult to gauge just how large or small these objects are. So I started using things for scale, and I don't know, I just started using coins because it's something that most people are familiar with.
Well, I mean, here's a perfect example. And, a lot of people may say, well, you don't have a large build size. But a lot of objects that require this kind of detail, you're not going to use a large build size for us because it would take days. I mean, obviously there's that possibility. As mentioned before, I own a Form 1, and to print anywhere near its build size would take literally 2 to 3 days at the resolution you're printing at here. So I see it perfect for small characters, and as I mentioned to you, I think of the idea of, and we'll get down to it, where do you have it? There he is. Remember, I sent you a scan based upon my 4 eyes complement to the structure sensor, and I was just blown away by the quality. I mean, it actually looks better than the scan itself, of what you can do with it. And I was thinking immediately, because obviously it's not that, it's actually fairly decent in size, scale it down even a little bit more, and as I call them, pinheads, where you put them on the end of your pencil or that and have a likeness of yourself or your girlfriend or whatever the case. So I think that would be a neat idea. And with the quality, I mean, it's just wow. And as you said, I like the what do they call it, the ruby red color. What company actually creates this particular resin here?
So I've worked with both resin manufacturers, both MadeSolid and Maker Juice. The one in the resin in the photos with the nickels on it is a MadeSolid product.
Okay, so this is a MadeSolid.
Yeah, and so I've been working with them to when you print things this small scale, it doesn't affect the detail much, but as far as you being able to actually see the detail, their normal red product is a little clear. It's kind of like a cherry Jolly Rancher in its translucency. So what I've done is I've mixed some white and some black in with it, and I've worked with MadeSolid so that they'll offer that as a product for not just for the little RP, but for high-powered DLP printers.
Ah, like mine. Well,
And
actually, like both of them. But we'll talk about that later. Oh,
So
looks like Chris is joining us again, so that's good. Sorry, Brad.
Sure.
So go ahead. Go back to the red.
You know, and it's not a mistake that a lot of these resins are red. Like you look at the B9 Creator, their cherry and their regular are kind of a red also, and it's just because red is the best at blocking the UV wavelengths. So it works really well as a UV blocker, which is kind of funny. Like we were looking at the droplet a little bit earlier. They have a blue UV shield.
Yeah, that kind
on the front of their printer, and blue is probably the worst color at blocking UV. So
that was
I hope it works out for them.
Yeah, that was my thoughts as well. Is that okay? Yeah, it's too close to the UV spectrum.
It does look pretty though.
Yeah, but if you notice the whatever they're calling it, it didn't have a large plastic envelope like yours does. If we go up to the top, so it was more of a tiny window, if I remember correctly. So it was more opaque, and then they just had little portion where yours is fully open, which is pretty cool. So why don't you kind of tell our audience what you're going to get in your kit if you head out to Kickstarter, which is going to launch soon?
So my hope is to submit the campaign for approval this weekend. I'll probably do a little bit of modifications after the Kickstarter is pretty lenient with making changes, so I'll probably still be tweaking the video and you know, adding some photos before the final launch. But my main push is to, you know, and typically Kickstarter approval takes about 7 to 10 days, so I'd expect this campaign to be live at least, I'd say, by 2 weeks. So the main kit that I want to focus on is this basic projectorless kit, and you can see sort of the photo in the Kickstarter here. And what this does is it gives you everything you need other than a projector to get printing. So we're going to have a, you know, it comes with the controller, the power supply, the mirror, you know, all the melamine sheets, the T-slots, the slides, the UV enclosure, and some sample resin. We're still working with MadeSolid and MakerJuice to see what they want to supply with the kit, or you know, what kind of deal they can work with us. You know, it would be, it's my goal. You know, it would be a goal for me to give everybody a sample of each of the manufacturer's resins and sort of let them choose for themselves. You know, it's one of the things that I kind of want to do with this kit is I want to stay kind of. I don't want to be like in the hands or pockets of anyone.
You want to be agnostic.
Yeah, I want to be just like, you know, I want to make a printer and you know, help people out and, you know, let them choose what's best and test it myself, make recommendations based on that. You know, I think that you know, whoever has the, you know, I would say from my initial testing too, it's not a simple case of one's better than the other. They sort of fit different niches, which is kind of nice. So depending on what you're trying to print, one may be better than the other.
Yeah, and so hopefully you'll point that out. You know, one thing I wanted to stress on this, and you can see it very clearly here, is that your vertical lift mechanism is a little different than some of the others, and that you went with a high quality. Why don't you identify it for me?
So that's a high wind. I guess they call them linear rails, linear ball rail and carriage. Some of the other printers, like, well, I think B9 has a similar slide, but
actually it doesn't.
Oh no, is it using?
It's pretty much, if I remember correctly, just a vertical rail. It may have 2 bars, but it in my opinion, it had a little more play than I would have desired. And no,
so
you know what? It's been a while since I built it. You're right. It is similar to this, but it's a longer throw. So I think in your case, it seems wider, where theirs seemed more narrow, and it did seem to have more play to it than yours did.
So I mean, there's a couple potential Well, thanks. So linear slides are probably kind of like the king of linear motion. A lot of printers use, man, I'm kind of, they basically use a cylindrical rod and a bearing that wraps around them, and
A linear bearing.
linear. Okay, those are linear bearing, and sort of the downside with those is they have a bit of, unless you're buying really high quality like Thompson products, they have a bit of slop in them, which is generally fine for 3D printing. The tolerances on most FFF printers are not, it's okay, and one of the downsides too with them is they're a little noisy. They can typically be noisy, and some of the other options out there are like OpenBuild's V-Rail, or you'll notice even with CME CNC they have a product called Cheapskate, which rides on T-Slot also, and that's what they're going to use for their droplet. Those still kind of have some slop in them though. So when you need something super rigid, you got to go with these linear slides. And not only do you need to go with linear slides, you need to size them appropriately. There are different classes of slides. Like sometimes you'll see 12mm miniature rails, and those are fairly small. What we've done is gone with a 15mm rail, which is pretty overkill for this project. But overkill in this case is good, especially when you're doing really small prints. Any Z wobble, you're going to notice. So
yeah, well, that's extremely important. And hate to cut you off,
Sure.
Brad, but let's kind of move on to the rest of it. And we really appreciate you coming on and talking
Brad.
about it. And
I've been one of the lucky people out there that has been getting to play with the beta version of this machine, and I just pulled this little guy off the printer this morning, and just the amount of detail, the feature sizes are with SLA. What it allows you to do is just something completely different that FDM doesn't really offer you, because you're restricted by your contour size, by the actual properties of the filament. So you can't get these fine feature sizes that you can get with a photopolymer and an SLA printer.
Yeah. Well, sorry that you dropped out, Chris, but I tried to carry the ball, and we kind of went through with Brad, the printer. And what's funny is, as I mentioned before, 3Ders.org did a scoop, and I thought we were going to be the first with Brad, but they scooped me, and they pretty much launched his whole information on the website, including the high-detailed images, which we went through to show off, including Brian down here from MadeSolid, which is just an incredible print.
How did they find this? How did 3Ders find that?
Go ahead,
well,
Brad.
I had talked to 3Ders. I didn't know that they were going to publish this now, though. I thought they were just going to work on it until I was ready to launch the campaign. So maybe some miscommunication there. But
okay. Well, it also mentions on the front line that it's $475. Now, is that just your early bird price, or?
Yeah. So the main focus of the campaign is this $499 kit, but there will be an early bird price with a limited quantity for $475, and I'm going to have some other options too. Like if individuals don't want to purchase a projector on their own, I'll have an option for them, and maybe even a few assembled kits. But the main focus of this will be the $499 basic kit, which, as I mentioned in the Kickstarter, is all of these are upgradable to the tilt option. Tilt option will be available for purchase separately through the little RP website, and I encourage people to look at that, because I think it's kind of a no-brainer upgrade. But I do, for certain reasons, I want to separate it from the Kickstarter.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, so let's get into my product and project, and then if Chris has something, and then we'll close it up for the day. So if you notice, I've been wearing these, I can't say stupid things on my head, but I've been wearing both the DK2, but this other little thing, which I found courtesy of some makers in Germany. It's called the VR-Spektiv by Stooksy. And essentially, if you guys remember a few weeks ago, Google at their Google I/O announced their, what they call it, Google Cardboard, which literally was some cardboard you folded up and you created yourself a pair of VR goggles. Well, if you weren't at Google I/O, you didn't get the kit, so people have been laser cutting the cardboard if you could get it for around $10, $20. But I thought, that's still kind of chintzy. And then I found these people, and I'll head out to the website, who work with kind of this hard foam type material, and there we go. And can everybody see that? So essentially, I saw this. This is great. That stuff is normally lightweight. Pretty much the same weight as cardboard. There's another company who's come out with a plastic version, but this is neat. And I, ordered it about 2 or 3 weeks ago and finally got it. In fact, we kind of thought that it would be missing, but luckily for Chris, I got an extra kit that I'm going to send to him. But essentially, this is the product here, and it may take a little while for it to load up. Maybe it's not kind of hearing. No. I don't know why. But essentially, it's not really fully assembled. It comes in one big sheet, and you have to kind of pull out the different pieces and put it together. But it takes, about 15 to 30 minutes to assemble. And then you put your phone in the front of it. So if you're familiar with the Google Cardboard, that's how this thing works. Its European price is $54, which works out to like $48. I think well worth it if you want to get into VR stuff but don't want to plunge for the DK2 at this particular point. It's pretty comfortable. Go back to my screen here. This is it here. The material has a somewhat of an odor, but if you let it air out for a while, it goes away. But yeah, I actually
it's made out of yoga mats, right?
Yep, something like that.
Yeah, or AKA Subway sandwiches.
Okay. But essentially, you put your phone in here. Actually, I don't have my phone on it. But you put it in this portion here. I took the lenses out, but it comes with some high-quality plastic lenses. That may be an oxymoron. But and then you just put them on. And if you've got an Android phone, you can download the Google, and there's other apps that you can use that gives you a stereoscopic view, and it works pretty cool. So it's a cheap alternative, and it comes with an elastic band. And I just talked to him this morning, actually last night. He had just gone to bed. But they're coming out with a larger version for larger screens like the LG G, and then there's another version with the 5.5, 5.7 screens like the Note 3. The nice thing about the new LG G is that is almost a XHD, which is almost a 4K screen, which is kind of the first. So then you can get, we were talking about the next step. So you could actually move to the next step and buy the next version. It may be a little more pricey. They do include a band in that version. This one does not. It just wraps around your head. So when you put the phone in, it kind of droops a little bit. So I plan to put a band like the DK2 or the DK1 from Oculus Rift. But yeah, this is an alternative. I don't know. Maybe I'll just go outside with it, just like this. Get some little lenses in front, and these will be my new sunglasses. What do you think, guys? Fashionable?
It's a good look for you, Mike.
Okay, well, I kind of thought so. So on to my project, and I'm just going to keep talking about 4 Eyes. I came out with a new logo.
All right, I saw this.
Thank you to Chris. He said, let's make the 4 a little, bolder, and I did that, and I kind of created a point on it so it looks like it's balancing, and that's an infinite loop, and then these are my lenses here. It kind of look like eyes, so hence the term 4 Eyes. So my sister, who's a patent attorney in New Mexico, who actually is just is a mother right now, but she thought she could help me, so she's actually filing the trademark information on this here. So I plan to use this symbol for my whole accessory line for the structure sensor. And speaking of that, this was and I think I sent you this, Brad. I'm actually printing this on the Form 1 right now. It actually came out pretty good. But the problem is I don't have any of that cool red. This is just a 3D image, so I don't get the detail like you do. So I'm going to have to bug MadeSolids.
I'll hook you up, Mike. I'll hook you up.
Okay. But essentially, this was done with the 4 Eyes. Notice the quality in the face. And then I went to a medium scan to get the entire body. This thing is huge. It was like 7 million faces or polygons, which is huge. In fact, it crashed my preform or my Formlabs software, so I couldn't even make a file to put on the Formlabs.
So you had to decimate it.
Decimate it down to about 3 million, which I also put a link out for you, Brad. But yeah, it was huge. But what's funny, the original size of this was life size. So if anybody wants to, go out and print this life size, you can have your own gypsy dancer. And if you don't know, this is my wife. She used to do gypsy belly dancing, and so she had some old costumes. And I thought they're ornamental. This is kind of like brassed up on the it's very ornamental, and this doesn't do it justice. If you look at the 360 item, there is flourishing in the back of the gown and everything else. So I thought it was pretty neat, and yeah, it actually scanned fairly well within less than a minute. So we're moving along with it. So that's the project I've been working on, and have some other neat things that I'll be bringing up next week. I have no rants this week, other than thank you to Oculus for getting me my DK2, and thank you, Chris. If we've talked about Chris before. Chris has the Stratus Fortis 250, which prints some excellent parts. So when I'm done prototyping and I want something a little quality, I always go out to Chris, and Chris is very accommodating, and he really works with you well. So
thanks. Well, it was a good design, Mike. It's a good design. I can't wait to see it in the stores. Maybe Best Buy,
Well, that's a possibility. Still in works with 3D System, but we have some work to do on the software in order to calibrate it to work with the lens system. So how about you, Chris? Anything that you've been working on?
Yeah, well, so pretty much I'll just we keep it short. MadeSolid announced their new tough resin, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually brought that up in your absence. So.
Okay. So you already touched on it.
We didn't have the link, so go ahead and talk.
Yeah. So MadeSolid has announced they have pre-orders available for yellow and orange tough resin, which is good for functional prototyping.
So did you get some material?
I have not.
They sent me some the other day, and I plan to print something. I've actually got a component that would actually benefit from it for one of my designers. So I'm actually going to do something with it. And I may even print one of my own parts on it. So we'll see how it goes. I didn't get much, so I won't be able to print much with it. But I'll let you guys know.
And my PolyFlex from Polymaker just arrived yesterday. So that was another.
Jealous.
That's my project. Well, I've got 3 rolls of it, so I'll definitely bring one to you, Mike. So PolyFlex, another flexible competitor, I would say, to NinjaFlex, maybe a little bit different product. That's pretty cool. So looking forward to that. So that's my project for the week. So between those 2 filaments and the little SLA or the little RP that I've been playing with, I got my hands full.
Great. Well, thank you, Chris. And well, that about wraps it up. Again, we want to thank Brad for being our special guest crasher, and we'll move on. So close it off for us.
All right. Well, thanks to all our listeners, and we will see you next week. Next week, we've got a real exciting interview on Tuesday with one of the co-founders of CME CNC. He'll be talking about his little SLA style machine called the Drop.
As well as Part Daddy.
And Part Daddy, the big giant Delta printer that we talked about last week. So we will see you next week. Again, this is August 1st, and it was all things 3D.
Yeah, and to give a time, it'll be at 1 p.m. on Tuesday for that. Okay.
All right.
That's it.